we're doing is fishing a small section of pads at the dead end of a channel. Not too many people come over here at all. They don't really even know about this spot. And if they do come over, they bypass it. It is kind of known as a bedding spot for largemouth. When they come in, you can actually sight fish the dead end of this channel and fish for the big females on the beds back here.
See, now that's a thing that most anglers do, is they'll see all this heavy cover and be afraid they're going to hook up and just go right past it. When sometimes that's the key to catching the bigger fish, is going where other anglers won't go. I mean, who cares if you lose a hook or if you lose a jig? You can always buy more.
And the thing about where we're at, most everybody down on Indian Lake likes to fish the game reserve where there's nothing but pads, same pattern, but with all the pressure that area gets, I like to go find my own water, and this is basically untapped water. Very few people fish this. The setup that we kind of have going today, here in Ohio, we like to throw a little ice bobber, little ice float. Then we add a 48-ounce jig head. That bobber holds the 48 up real nice. And we're throwing a pink and purple with a chartreuse tail popsicle Southern Pro Stinger. This morning we are tipping that off with some crappie nibbles, chartreuse colored. As the water gets warmer, I think we can put the crappie nibbles away, and they should have a real good bite without having to put a crappie nibble on. Last week I had real good activity. There was a lot of bait fish.
There's one right there. Look how black that is.
That's good and dark right there.
He's been sitting. Just came up from deep.
It's a pretty decent fish, about a 3/4 pound fish. I fish a lot of tournaments, and I'd love to have 7 good ones of those to start a good tournament out, and then upgrade. But that's a good eating fish right there. Probably about an 11-inch fish.
As you can see, tell them why it's so dark.
This is a male. The male fish will blacken up, and we like to call it, they put their tuxedos on when they get ready to spawn. So the fish are darkening up, so they're thinking spawn. This fish right here is 11 1/4 inches. That one's going in the live well. Now, important thing to remember here in Ohio, everybody remember there's a 9-inch minimum for all the crappie. That was put into effect a couple years ago, and I think that program's working out real well. We're seeing bigger fish. We're seeing more fish since they put the 9-inch minimum limit on here in Ohio. The rods we're using today are B&M. Brian's using the B&M, and then I'm actually using a Gander Mountain Advantage 12-foot rod. We're throwing 6-pound test. You can actually get away with 8-pound test in the pads like this. Gives you a little more fighting chance if you get a good fish on. There's a good fish.
Now the good thing about,
not a big fish, but one for the frying pan.
Oh yeah, a couple fish sticks. As I was saying, the good thing about crappie fishing is you don't have to throw on that heavy pound test like you would bass fishing. Now, bass fishing, I've seen it get up to 60-pound braid. As you said, we're throwing about 6-pound test, and that's almost perfect for crappie fishing. It lets you, it lets you get down into the areas you need to get to because it's monofilament, and B, you don't have to worry about pulling a whole stick in. If you hook up, you can just break right off and retie, as I'm doing right now.
There's one.
Yeah, he's gonna keep. Look at how that fish ate that. If you can see that inside his mouth, he buried it. Now, this can be one of two things. A, he's hungry, or B, there's more fish around it, and he's trying to be the first one there to get it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip back into the same spot we just were. See if we can't get another one. Now we're going to check him.
The last few fish we've caught have come right against the seawall, out about 3 to 6 foot. Generally, this kind of pattern here, the closer you throw to the seawall, the more opportunity you are to catch a smaller male. The bigger females will hold out on the ends, outside edges of these pads and then move in. The females, I don't think, have moved up against the wall yet, and we don't have any wind to help us today to push them back up in there. But what we're doing is dropping beside the pads, just finding a hole, trying to get as close to the root system as you get. If you can see this little section of pads right here, what you want to look for is a whole bunch of pads that come together and form a root ball. That provides the most protection, and you want to take your jig, drop that down in the hole right in the middle of those root pads. Give it a few jigs. If nothing's there, pick up, move to the next one. I try to locate the biggest section that has the most roots, the stems all coming in together. If it's there, that fish is going to bury it. With the sun not being completely up yet, the fish could be scattered. They may not be tucked in tight to the actual stems and under the pads. They could be just anywhere out in there. There's a good fish right there. Big old black male. He was kind of out away from the pad. Kind of chased it, sucked it under. About another 11-inch fish. Good eater size. Nice and dark. As you can see, he's starting to darken up. So, not a huge fish, but a good fish. That fish here must be a little bit older. He's got a gray hair on him. Pulled that off his chin.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Those are what we came here for, right there. Nice solid slab. Oh, I might need the hemostats. What we did, we moved out of the lily pads, and I got it. Moved over to some man-made structure, hitting some docks now. Pulled a couple off, but those are hopefully what we're going to be filling the live well with.
There's one. Not a pig, but not a bad fish. That come off between the posts of the boat dock right there. Like Brian said, we moved to another area, and we're fishing boat docks right now. So
Not a bad keeper. They're still hitting the popsicle jigs and just burying it down in them. And that should be close to finishing out the limit for the day for me, and Brian's getting close.
Now what we're doing now is we're just flipping right underneath this dock. They seem to be turning on. He's got
There's
one.
good fish.
He's fighting.
They're pretty much all keepers today. No pigs, but great fish for the frying pan. Folks, you don't have to go far to get some good fishing. Indian Lake's here in our backyard. It's close. Try it out.
That's fun. We came and hit this same dock earlier today and caught maybe one or two off
Yeah,
of
I
it.
think we caught two fish earlier in the day. Returned afternoon, and they all pulled out, and
Seems
we
like
found a good school just up underneath the dock there, sitting in the shade.
And then we're still throwing our 12-foot rods, keeping our distance away from it because they're hitting it out a little bit from the dock too on the way back to the boat.
We're sitting right about 4 feet of water, and the water temperature's climbed up to 60 degrees, warmest we've seen all day, and we can kind of tell because the fishing's heating up. This area that we're in is not too far from where we started this morning. Different type of structure, no lily pads at all back here. What we're fishing is seawalls and boat docks. And we've caught fish off of seawalls about 3 foot down, anywhere from 2 to 3 feet off the seawalls, and underneath the docks as well, wherever there's shade. That's kind of our pattern we're doing now. Same setup that we had earlier this morning. Ice bobbers and floats and 48-ounce jig head with popsicle jig. I don't think we've tried another color all day today.
We did notice, here's a tip, if you get on a school and they stop biting, what we did was we set down a couple more inches and then threw out again, and then we seemed to pick up more that were deeper in the school.
Right.
So before you move on, try, hey, you got another one.
That's a good
Always
fish.
got a good fish on.
This is a good fish, another keeper.
So before you move on, try setting yourself a little bit deeper, or
Not quite as big.
even changing color if you have to, because you don't want to leave on a spot that you're really hitting on.
Must have been reeling him sideways because probably one of the smaller fish that we've caught in a while. We'll go ahead and check him though. If he'll go 9, we'll decide if we want to put him in the live well. Oh,
Yeah, got me one on too.
oh, that's a good one. Right here. That's definitely a 9-incher. There's no doubt. Don't even measure that one. Brian's catching the fire so we can cook the fish, or the firewood so we can cook the fish tonight. Somebody's got to do that. Beautiful day on Indian Lake.
There's one.
Small one. It might be a bluegill, which we haven't caught many of them today. And it's a
crappie.
It's a bluegill.
It's a bluegill.
That's actually the first one of the day. Last week we couldn't keep these off of our hooks. One thing we did do different since this morning, we quit using crappie nibbles. We didn't have to use them for the rest of the day after this morning. When we talked about that, we couldn't get bit without a crappie nibble on until the sun come up good. And once the sun come up good, we put the nibbles away and just been throwing straight jigs for the remainder of the day.
There's one.
That's a good fish. That almost looked like a white bass there for a moment.
Oh, we're gonna lose him. All right. Yeah, that's a good keeper. Like I said, that's what we're here for.
And we just lost another one.
That's heme stats for me.
Yeah. If you can take a shot and get it up underneath that dock, right underneath that pontoon, about 3 feet back in, that bobber goes under almost every time.
Not bad. I can smell it frying up already.
So the school's still there. We haven't cleaned them out yet. That's good. We're only at the point of the channel. We haven't even made it probably 10 feet. And we got on them and stopped. Got a little history with this dock. Real familiar with it. It's a dock that doesn't typically hold small fish. It typically will hold a good fish or a keeper. I've caught some 1.5 pound fish in a tournament here. Won a tournament off of this particular dock and had big fish off of this dock. So it's been good to us in the past. I have seen people come and try to fish it and never seen them really do much good off of it. There's one. Good fish.
That's what I'm talking about. Now I noticed I moved over just a little bit, so maybe the whole school is moved. What is that?
What's he got on him?
Looks like some...
Got a little sore on top of his right eye.
Is that a
Don't know if he got hit by something or
something?
something's wrong with him.
Yep. It's all right. That's what we're here for.
With us, at the end of the day, when I'm done crappie fishing, I tell you what, I am sore. At my age, all the lifting and bending, I'm on my knees half the time watching the bobber clear underneath the pontoons, underneath the boat docks.
27 is his age, by the
Yeah,
way.
27. Thank you.
Yeah. Little tip on when you're fishing. Don't be scared to change your bait out. This thing has been hit I don't know how many times. Just go ahead and get rid of that. Don't be scared to put a new one on. Don't worry about the cost. If you're catching fish, you're not really worried about the cost.
One more up underneath there.
Oh, that's a good one.
Not a bad fish. Doesn't seem to be. Definite keeper. He's coming in the boat.
All right.
Freezer is going to be full, people.
We can do.
I've been fortunate and been blessed over the years. Most of my baits that I do get are free. So I have plenty of popsicles in the boat, plenty of jig heads. So I've had some good sponsorship over the years and a lot of really good people like Crappie Pro, for one, Southern Pro. Just been several people step up and sponsor me, and it helps. There's no doubt that it definitely helps. Missed one right there. So I've got enough fish.
Not a big one, but
We got enough jigs probably for another 5 years.
well, not as many times as I've hooked up today. Oh, we're gonna check that one. That's gonna be really close. That's a small one.
You know, Brian, I feel bad for some of my buddies. I got on them good last week too. I feel bad because I had so many people call and want me to take them down today. But I kind of saved the day for you and I.
And what a great day it was. Once again, always check your bait, make sure it's pushed all the way up. Don't worry about taking the time to make sure it's right before you get back in there. Now, it's slowing down a little bit since we got here. Like I said, we're not going to move on yet. We're going to either change the depth or try something a little bit different to see if we can't pull them out a little more.
Color change may be all it takes. We might go to a Southern Pro Acid Rain here and give that a shot. Just change the color up on them, give them something different to look at for the fish that are left there. If changing the depth don't work, change the color. You know, it doesn't take a big fancy rig like we've got today. Anybody can come out in a bass hunter or a John boat and basically do the same thing we can. It might be a little harder getting across the water, but find you a place to put in that's pretty close to where you want to fish, and just use good judgment while you're out there running. But anybody can do what we're doing today.
A little bit of recap of what we've done all day. This morning we went and found a little patch of lily pads, and we seemed to do good from pulling them off of them this morning. As it warmed up, we moved out of there, moved over to some boat docks, as well as some standing wood, and they seem to have turned onto that a lot more. So maybe that's a pattern. I don't know if it's the full moon coming up or if that's just how they're going this year, but Indian Lake has definitely came to be a great lake. Within the past couple years, the crappies really turned on and gotten some size to them. The past couple years, Indian Lakes had a lot of numbers, but all just keepers.
Right. You know, I found that, you know, lakes will do that. They'll have a couple good years, and then they'll maybe 3 years where you shrink in size but increase in numbers. But like we mentioned before, the 9-inch Ohio minimum for crappie has done wonders on how fast the fish actually grow. I haven't noticed the 3 years of small fish before you get good ones since they have adopted that. So I'm excited about it. I was glad to see it. Another thing I'm glad to see is the new Ohio deer laws coming out this year with the tag limits per county. They've changed the muzzleloader season as well, so kind of happy about all those changes. We'll see how the whitetail season goes, because Brian and I both hunt.
And that'll be coming up on a later episode of Hooked Outdoors TV. Yeah, we bounce it off the wood here.
Might want to try the third. See, with that cast there, I went so far into the dock, the only way to see in the pontoon is to get down on your knees.
Which isn't bad for a 27-year-old.
And then you set the hook. Not a big fish, but it was way back in there, tucked underneath. We probably had a total of maybe 5 fish today, maybe 6 that didn't keep.
Right. That's all right, because we'll save it for another day.
He'll be a keeper next year. That's a good cast.
Yeah, well.
Now what he's doing here,
I'll show you. We get out here, and you hook the dock. You don't go in the water. You just hook up above it. And you take it right there, and you just shake it like that.
Mm-hmm. Them fish jump right up after it.
They hear that.
And then your partner throws underneath where you're hung up and catches a fish. Works every time.
There.
Got it?
Well, you see, if you get hung up and you're able to reach it, don't keep pulling on it. Reel all the way down to it. That bobber, it's a slip bobber for ice fishing, so it'll slip all the way down to the bottom, and you'll be able to just push the whole thing right off. You won't even have to worry about losing your bait.
Or spooking the fish that bad. You can just run your end of your rod in the water real easy and pick it right off, and without spooking the area.
You spooked that lady back there, didn't you?
Yeah.